Season 3, Episode 7 of the all-new Politics.
Hello.
The show has had a revolutionary overhaul. No title, no music, but notes. Actually done some work. There's all stuff written out, and we've got a brand new Corbyn watch sign.
Yeah, as I mentioned just before we came on air, this is the first time we've actually ever prepared and done notes properly. Well, I mean, don't get me wrong, we don't come into these shows not completely unprepared and not having a clue of what we're talking about, although that has happened.
They slip through the net from time to time, don't they?
Yeah, that is true. We actually, this is the first time we've done it where someone's actually put some serious effort into the preparation for the show. So I applaud your efforts, Mr. Blake.
That's very nice of you. I did forget to prepare the celebrity gossip section, but I know what we're talking about. Kendall Jenner again, which is basically like the Kardashian segment now. I think I have a weird fascination with the idea that I care about what people care about, even though I don't. I think that's why I've started following on Instagram and all. Like,
wow, you formally. Do you know what? I joined Instagram. I joined Instagram for the first time ever on Tuesday night.
That's
I
good.
posted my first photograph last night.
Was it food? Because Instagram was all about food.
Yeah, well, it was. The thing is that it wasn't a fake picture of food. It was a picture of people chilling after they'd just eaten food, and I put like food stuff in the hashtags. I got like 16 likes, and I thought, wow, people really need to get a life. I think that's probably the only post I'm going to put on there, just to see, sort of how many it can accumulate over the time Instagram survives for.
Well, that's true. And once this show blows up, then your Instagram feed will have yeah, it's not going to blow up. Anyway,
we'll edit that out, shall we?
There is obviously quite a big talking point this week, which is the bombing of Syria.
Yeah.
But the other thing I want to talk about, which is I actually think quite big news. I appreciate the Syria thing is bigger news right now, but I think on a historical time thing, this might equally be one of those points that historians look back upon. I'm going to read you a little bit about this. The Chinese military is currently just started getting involved in its first UN peacekeeping mission. So despite having, which is actually, when you think about it, quite big news. A few facts from my research. The Chinese military budget is $131.57 billion US. I don't know what day they worked that out on, because obviously the exchange rate fluctuates a bit, and if that goes up 1%, that's an extra $1 billion.
130. Okay, is that an annual budget or just like a daily throwaway?
No, that's an annual budget, and it's got the Chinese army has the army. Just the army has more. The total Chinese military has more soldiers than the U.S. Army, but if you include the U.S. Marine Corps, then the U.S. has more infantry. So obviously, I don't want to go up to a load of Marines and say that they're just basic infantry, because obviously they're sort of a level above, and they're quite intimidating. So I wouldn't want to say anything to them at all. But to the extent of, do they know what they're doing on the ground, therefore they count as infantry? Yes. So also it's the second largest military expenditure in the world after the US. The US is being over $500 billion. So
how can you spend that much money on an
army?
Easy.
Like, planes aren't cheap.
Yes, I get that.
They're not selling jet fighters on late night TV, and like the later you ring, the cheaper the price is. But they've only got 50. And after they're gone, they're all gone. Like, it's not that kind of system, to be honest.
20 planes, and even we think our budget's high for our armed forces, and we've got 20, 25 planes, and it's just
the Chinese economy is big.
Billion.
The Chinese economy is bigger than ours, and they've got more people. But yeah, anyway, so basically what they're doing is they've got involved in a peacekeeping mission, so it's infantry, medics, and engineers, and they're over in South Sudan, which is actually quite. So basically it's basically where they get a lot of oil from. So
Yeah, I wonder if, yeah, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, suddenly the Chinese arguments against the war in Iraq are null and void. But no, their peacekeeping mission in South Sudan is interesting because obviously they have quite a large presence in Africa. They build roads, they build infrastructure, they invest in Africa. So
it's
that
British Empire 2.0. Like
it really is. It's the intelligent way of building an empire because at some point there are going to be natural resources to exploit in Africa, and at the point at which the natural resources are able to be exploited by people who know what they're doing,
just
they're
to
going to
point
go straight
out,
to the Chinese.
I'd just like to point out, so I don't look like someone who is completely new to the concept of geology. The natural resources have been there for millions of years. They're not just going to magically spring out of the ground. Have you noticed that there's a massive oil field turned up last night? Oh no, it wasn't there yesterday. Anyway, I appreciate what you're saying. I didn't want to look on the internet like someone who's like, yeah, oil, yeah, I don't know where it comes from.
I like the idea that you're just there going, I don't know where oil comes from. Can you help me, please?
Like the foreman in a 1970s sitcom. Got a load of intelligent workers, and the boss is a complete idiot. It's like, oh, I just found all this oil.
Love it. Love it. No, well, as in sort of the Chinese, you know, when it comes to the point where the African nations will start selling a lot more of what they have available, they'll sell it to the Chinese, and they'll sell it to them cheap because the Chinese have invested the infrastructure there, so invest the money in the infrastructure already. So I can see where they're coming from. And the idea of a UN peacekeeping force, obviously, this being huge news because China are actually contributing to a United Nations peacekeeping force, and that sort of is a building block for them being involved in further peacekeeping forces going forward. So yeah.
I just think it's generally interesting because obviously one of the allegations is that the West thinks it has the right to police the world and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you can make a lot of arguments that it's true, but then on the flip side of it, there was a lot of people who were saying, and probably still do, because this is the first peacekeeping mission, that you've got countries like Russia and India and China. I mean, India only spends about 40 billion US a year on its military, but it's still like in the top 10. And
Yeah.
you know, China's got a massive thing. People saying, well, actually, you know, there's villages being attacked, burned down by terrorists. Why aren't these larger companies trying to lend a helping hand? And it's arguably, as your economy grows, it'll be interesting to see if you reach a point where your economy is so large, and you're in the top 5 in the world, and after a 20-year period, you start getting involved in UN peacekeeping missions, and maybe in our lifetimes when we see Brazil and that become, I mean, so they're growing, but become a serious player, and then 20-30 years later, it'll be Brazilian troops getting involved in whether there's conflict. I mean, I don't know. It's a possibility. That's what we have. That's kind of the evidence we have so far, but from quite a small sample size. So, but I just, the people who used to criticise these nations, a lot of people said, oh well, China and Russia and these countries don't try and get involved in other countries' disputes, and then some people said, well, maybe they should because remote villages are being burnt to the ground, and that's not very nice. So I just think this is something that will be looked back on as quite an interesting point. Part of the reason they're getting involved in South Sudan, South Sudan only got its independence in 2011, presumably from the rest of Sudan, which is still called Sudan and not North Sudan.
No, that was something basically.
Yeah, I don't know if the South Sudanese people refer to it as North Sudan, otherwise that might get confusing. I mean, I'm not an expert on it, but I do a podcast. But yeah, since basically there's a lot of unrest in the country. Since December 2013, there have been 7 ceasefires, which, I mean, I don't want to criticise the person who's negotiating these ceasefires, but I mean that means your average ceasefire lasts about 4 months. It's kicked off again. We need another one. Yeah, and previous involvement the Chinese have had in like sort of UN style stuff. There's Chinese anti-piracy going on in the Indian Ocean. I don't know whether that's to encourage internet piracy by devaluing real piracy.
I like the idea that someone sat there in China with a laptop going, yes, there are no people sending DVDs across the ocean. Now I can do it online.
Some sort of criminal empire, like, damn these physical formats.
It's like, God damn the prevalence of easy-to-read Blu-ray DVDs. What is going on here? What is this madness in the world? Download my illegal copy.
When will my bandwidth empire take off? But yeah, so my
website is only accessible in China, but I don't care.
Yeah. But I just thought that was generally quite interesting. So the next topic is obviously going to combine.
Corbyn watch. Corbyn watch.
Corbyn watch.
I'm gonna go peace for Corbyn. You know, the guy wants peace, and the guy on the other side of the table thinks that peace is something we can create out of bombing.
Well, there's a lot of issues to talk about here. I mean, my personal thing is I'm still not 100% decided on this issue. The only thing it reminded me of was when the coalition government lost the vote to bomb Syria before, but specifically bomb Assad's regime, and they lost that 285 votes to 272.
Was it that close?
It was that close. That's,
wow.
13 votes.
That's ridiculous.
Now, I forgot to Google how many MPs there were sitting in that parliament. I think it was the same as this one, but I don't know if like Sinn Féin and that voted. I assume they didn't. But
no, they don't take their seats. So.
No, but equally, I don't know if that's the kind of issue they might actually. Can you postal vote as an MP? I really don't know. Like,
no, you have to be present. You have to go through. This is the ridiculous thing. You go through gates, and then you're counted as you go through a gate. Like
sheep.
Yeah,
oh, that's quite a good analogy.
That's a phenomenally good analogy. You know, they are like sheep. But I found it quite amusing how so there are so many sides to this argument.
I mean, this is why I like the thought of this podcast is we don't. Well, you often do, but I rarely actually give an opinion away. We just get to talk about the issues, and this is a topic where there are so many ways of. It's like a spider's web, but in like 5 dimensions. Like,
in fact, funnily enough, it's just like the war in Syria, being that complicated. You know,
I mean, to cut all of the next 20 minutes out, if you just want to end the podcast now, like, Syria is a 3-way war. Now, I appreciate that we have unconventional warfare. It's not like the good old days of the 17th century when France would line up on one hill, we'd line up on another hill, wearing different team colours.
And we'd batter the hell out of each other until someone had more people standing than the other.
We just up for a while, and then we would shoot at each other, and then you know, World Wars kicked off. But a 3-way war isn't a thing. Like, historically, it isn't a thing, and now it is a thing. So
we've never been involved in this sort of a situation before.
No, because you think about World War II, like, not everyone thought that the Russians were brilliant, but the ceasefire did hold until the end of the war. Even though arguably it was sort of breaking down at Yalta and Potsdam, certainly at a high up level, people would get thinking, oh, those Russians or communists might be a bit sneaky. And I imagine the communists thought that the West might be up to some sneaky doings themselves, which is actually where half this stuff comes from post World War One. Like, the boundary lines drawn on the Middle East are literally the problem.
They're drawn with a ruler.
Yeah, they are very straight.
Someone sat down and said, which province would you like? We have this province called whatever it is. We kind of like that. And the other guys on the other side of the table said, well, we kind of like that as well. And the British or the Americans or the Russians just went, okay, here's a ruler. We'll draw it down the middle, and you can both have half of it. How does that sound? They went, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that. Yeah. It's like in Africa. None of the lines are wiggly. Yeah, they only wiggle when they follow rivers.
Yeah. The only place that
They're all
had straight
straight.
lines drawn where it sort of worked was the US of A. And then the boundary
Yeah.
between the US and Canada is predominantly a straight line along a line of latitude.
Yeah.
And that sort of worked because A, like both sides, likes a bit of a tear up. And Napoleon obviously sort of got involved. That would have been a three-way war when Napoleon got involved with after the old 1812 burning down of the White House. But
Yeah.
the population density in the US, obviously, when that was happening, people were sort of settling in California, and excluding the Native Americans, who obviously got pretty much the rawest deal ever. The population density started on the East Coast, dense-ish for the time, and just petered out. So
Yeah.
the drawing of an artificial line when there's population density of like modern day Tibet, he sort of got away with it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
because
But now,
Syria is what used to be Mesopotamia in Bible times.
well,
Like,
you've got to remember, actually, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Afghanistan, including parts of Saudi Arabia and what we currently know as Israel and northern Egypt, were all part of Mesopotamia.
yeah,
That's,
they
you
were good
know,
at empires. They were nearly as good as the Romans.
but I just it, it is a situation that's completely something that we've never faced before. But I like the idea that we've gone in and start. I like the idea, the concept of going in and bombing for peace is like going into a brothel for a long relationship. It's not the right way to go about it. It's not the intelligent, well thought out um, plan that we should probably be using in a moment where the issues inside Syria are so complex that, I mean, I don't think anyone should really be bombing in Syria. I think we should be dealing with IS in Iraq, and then after that, sort of saying, well, we've now dealt with these guys here. Why don't we then move on and deal with them elsewhere? Let's finish our mission here, and then go and finish them off in their heartland. We haven't finished what we started in Iraq, so why we're going into Syria is beyond me.
Another news fact, well, not news fact, but another fact. Iraq created October 1st, 1919. So
Wow.
there we go. I mean,
So in 4 years' time, they'll be celebrating their 100th anniversary.
the centenary.
What a way to celebrate a 100th anniversary with the entire north of your country taken over by jihadist troops.
Well, not the
Yay!
entire north, because obviously the northern province of Iraq is the
Kurdish.
self-governing province of Kurdistan, which,
Yeah.
I mean, I think I've said this on the podcast before, I fully assume that will end up as a separate country.
The problem is they don't have any money there, and that's what they need from the Iraqi government in total is some money.
They will, but equally, they'll probably get, I mean, given that the Kurds as an ethnic group have no official country of their own, like regional provinces their own, the closest thing they've got, I imagine they'll probably get some US funding, assuming the US economy hasn't completely tanked by then.
Of course,
And
last time
I appreciate they're not going to get a big loan from Greece. Like, I'm not. That would be silly.
It's going to be a loan from Greece at 22% interest.
Per day.
So they can pay back the Germans at 18% interest.
Some sort of middleman, like travel companies before the internet.
I like the idea of Dick Cheney just turning up one night with a fat cigar and going, yeah, so I think you should definitely lend to these guys because they're clearly top guys.
Yeah, just get the Lehman Brothers involved. They've got a great track record. But no, I mean, arguably the Kurdistan thing is part of what makes this so messy. Is the Turks and the Kurds have had a very long war. Like,
yeah,
Kurdish.
They really.
Turkey, like Kurdish groups who are who think that the eastern part of Turkey should be Kurdish.
Yeah.
That's why Turks and Kurdish war goes back quite a long time.
Yeah.
I forgot to research that. It was sort of, because they were both in the ancient caliphate, not the modern one that we've got. And as that broke down, tribalism, ethnic tribalism, sort of bubbled up again.
Yeah.
Quite a few wars, but both got sort of conquered by the caliphate armies. I don't know what the technical word is.
Yeah.
But that's why the Turks and the Kurds hate each other. I mean, because that's the thing. Because when you look at the footage coming out of modern day Kurdistan, it seems like the kind of place where the US would think is good for some nation building. Because you've got sort of free-ish elections. I don't want to slander anyone, but clearly the YPG and like the Peshmerga are doing a decent job of fighting ISIS.
They really are.
They push them back quite a lot. Clearly, because the more territory of a province of Kurdistan can get, the more it's going to have as a country. Like, I'm assuming it's quite a sneaky idea, but equally you're fighting IS. So I don't want to slander.
You're not going to argue against people who are fighting Daesh, are you? Really?
No, no, exactly. Unless they're the Russians, and obviously they are 100% wrong, as David Cameron has no doubt told us.
I quite like the Russians getting involved. I mean, it goes back to a story back in the early days of Al Qaeda, back in the late 80s, I think it was, where Russia were sent a delegation to Palestine.
When the Mujahideen were attacking the Russian military with US arms.
Oh, back in those days, yes, well remembered. But the
this is the 80s, before garage was invented, really. Well, certainly before UK garage was invented, so a long time ago.
Oh, man, I heard some old school UK garage the other day. It made me so happy, so happy. Honestly, like, when I do hear it, it's such a good thing. But I found it. It was an article about why terrorists don't generally attack the Russians. Was because they kidnapped some Russian dudes. I don't know, the delegation. They kidnapped 4 Russians and they chopped off fingers and sent them back to the Russian embassy in, I think, Israel or Turkey or somewhere like that. And they said, look, this is how the rest of them will arrive if you don't pay us or release hostages or something like that. So Russian special forces went in and took the Al Qaeda leader in wherever it was, beheaded him and sent the head back and said, "Give us our people back," and they did. And since then, the Russians have not. The Russians haven't been really touched up until some idiot decided to plant a bomb on a Russian plane bound for Moscow, and then now they be stuffed.
Well, there were a few issues with terrorism in the southern provinces of Russia. So
like in Georgia, and I mean, you got the
Georgia is not officially a province of Russia. I appreciate.
No. I know what you mean.
It's future Russia, but
no. What's the bit? Chechnya. That's it.
Yeah.
Islamist rebels in Chechnya, separatists. That's it.
Because that's what some people forget is that there are Russian states with majority Muslim populations, because that was the old caliphate stretched sort of to that border, which it's just something people don't really think about, but it's true. Because you tend to think of Russia as being all Orthodox Christian, or out in the sort of Siberian parts. You've got people who are sort of ethnically similar to Native Americans. If what we think about population spread is true, sort of a crossing of a land bridge, and they're distinct. I mean, that was an argument for the Russian Revolution back in the day. Was you had a load of white European-looking people in the castles, well, not castles, palaces, and the people outside looked somewhat different. That was something that appealed to the communist idea back in the day. But it's just one of those. Anyway, we're getting completely. I've completely forgotten where we were.
We really are.
We're talking about public security. We're talking about quite a serious issue, and
we're taking the piss.
Well, no, not really. We're just talking about just general issues. But
I mean, What my issue is with the Syrian airstrikes. It's not that they're taking place in the first place. Don't get me wrong. I disagree with them in their current form. I think that we're going to end up with more refugees, and with us only taking 20,000 refugees in. So, say for example, At the moment, I think it's 12 countries are attacking Daesh in Syria, which has displaced 3 million people. So if you take that, that's what, 400, no, hang on, I can't remember exactly how many it is. But say, for example, for argument's sake, yeah, 350,000 refugees per
Calculator
country.
here.
Yeah, go for it.
Right.
Yeah, go for it.
We're doing live maths. This is
3 million divided by 12, go for it.
250. No. 250,000.
So 250,000 refugees per country. So if you were to argue that actually that's a quite high number, we should be, if we're getting involved, we should be at least considering rehoming 250,000 people. That should be our number one priority. If we're going to be bombing the homes of these people, we should be accepting responsibility for what happens to them. It doesn't matter whether the thing is, if it doesn't matter if we don't kill them. Okay, that's the thing is, if we don't kill them, that's not the big thing. It's like saying, oh yeah, we haven't killed civilians. Yes, but you've displaced 250,000 of them. So what are we going to do with them? Oh, we're going to send them to might as well be a bloody concentration camp. Send them to a refugee camp in Turkey. Yeah, because the conditions there have been swell so far. But why don't we just take them in? My issue is that it's not particularly well thought out, and there are other options. But it was presented to Parliament and to the monkeys who run this government as being the only option, and that's the problem I've got with it. It's not the only option. Military intervention is inevitable now because Daesh has become so strong that they can't be defeated without the presence of ground troops. And this number of 70,000 ground troops is fictional. It's completely fabricated. The guy might as well have got a piece of paper and gone, well, what sounds like a decent number? 100,000 just seems a bit too round, and 50,000 sounds just a little bit too low for what we're trying to accomplish. I mean, they do between 20 and 30,000 they've got. So if we double that, 30, and add a little bit more, I'll use 70,000. That's the figure we'll use because that sounds believable and also something that we could work with. It's completely fabricated. Everybody knows that. Problem is, he's used it and he's used it well. You got to respect the guy. You got to respect David Cameron and his front bench for using that so well.
Oh yeah, he's good at what he does. Like,
yeah.
In terms of, like, Cameron is quite a good prime minister in terms of he delivers a reasonable speech. Nothing like Churchill levels, but he never gives a terrible speech. He never gives a terrible interview.
I don't know. He got owned by Jon Snow right after the election when that whole thing about Saudi Arabia being on the United Nations Human Rights Council.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. We can thank WikiLeaks for that. That was a particularly interesting leak. But
yeah, I mean, you got to respect him. He's doing a good job for
himself.
Yeah, for himself. Yeah, he's doing a good job for himself. But the fact is that what I don't like is the fact that he didn't apologise for using the phrase terrorist sympathisers. He was given the opportunity 12 times during the debate yesterday, 10 hours, given the opportunity 12 times to apologise, and funnily enough, he did not. The guy, he knows he got it wrong. He knows he used the wrong words there. Just come out and say it, man. Say I'm sorry, move on. You'd be a bigger man if you said I'm sorry than if you didn't, really. Although he has got quite a big face.
Yeah.
Whenever I see it, I start wondering whether someone's going to pick up his neck and play ping pong with it. It's quite round and flat.
When you say he needs to say sorry, would just him saying I'm sorry for saying that phrase count? Or would you need to do a sort of Nick Clegg style sorry where he says sorry about 30 times in a 5-minute period?
No,
he's sorry. He's so sorry. Which of these are you aiming for?
I know. I really want him to stand up in Parliament and sing Justin Bieber. That's the level of sorry I'm looking for.
Well, what old Bieber, which you didn't like, or new Bieber, which is actually pretty good?
No, new Bieber sorry.
New Bieber is just all bangers, no
Yeah, I know.
match.
As in the track "Sorry" by Justin Bieber. Have you not heard that? It's a new one. Come on, dude.
Yeah, that's all about
Where are
what?
you now?
Yeah, that was good. But what's the one he released after that?
Um, what do you mean?
Yes, that is an absolute stunner of a
Dude,
tune.
you are well behind the times. He has released "Sorry" and "Love Yourself" since then, and they are both tunes, man.
I'll check it out.
You
Yeah,
need to
but
check out this album. This
it,
album is sick.
his album is just for UK top 40. Like,
It's it's so much better than anything he's ever made before,
the
and it's
thing
the
is,
best
like,
music out there at the moment. I truly believe "Sorry" by Justin Bieber is the most important song for 2015 because it made everyone who hated Justin Bieber this time last year go, I like this.
yeah, but he's working with like Diplo and people as producers, and
I
also,
know.
like, what? How old is he now? Is he 22? Like, he
Must
started
be,
making music when he was 14, and I've slagged him off many times myself. But the
yeah, me
difference
too.
in my music taste when I was 14 and to when I was 22. I mean, when I was 14, I only listened to dance, house, and drum and bass. Like, I only discovered garage when I was about 16. So
I
my
love the
music.
idea that your expansion of your musical knowledge went from dance, drum and bass to garage. It's like, I'm sorry, mate, that's not how it goes.
Yeah, but for most people, they only started liking dance music when they were 20. So we should really give them the benefit of the doubt. But anyway, back to the question at hand, and before we get on to celebrity stuff, like I think one of the ultimate ironies of this bombing is we tried to bomb Assad a while ago, and I'm so glad we didn't because it would have made us look foolish, which we really touched on. But one of the greatest ironies is the whole point, to an extent, of like ISIS, Daesh, ISIL. Like ISIL is a good one because Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. The whole point of ISIS, in a sort of weird analogy to communism, is that the Great Caliphate, if they ever manage to set it up, which hopefully they won't, like the nation state is a complete anathema to it. Like the idea of a complete like world socialist republic utopia. The idea is there is no such thing as a nation state. So you've got ISIS, who like I don't think they've got a manifesto, but if they did, like one of their stated goals would be the idea that there is no boundary between Iraq and Syria because it's all part of, the ISIS caliphate. Whereas we, on the other side, like, oh, we can't bomb there. There's like a line drawn on the map. There's like a fence, so we can only bomb on this side. So, and I don't know if there's any sneaky like ISIS infantry, like, oh no, I'll go on the Syria posting, and not the Iraq posting. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to like be like too childish about it, but like we think that the Nebulous West think that this boundary is a massive issue, and until less than 24 hours ago, it was certainly for the UK was a serious boundary, but
Yeah.
on the ground there was no boundary because it's all ISIS territory.
Yeah.
Um,
The, the,
and their stated aim was to completely do away with a boundary, which in a real world didn't exist anyway. Like that's so in a way it was ridiculous, but we weren't bombing it, and in a way it was the most sensible thing ever because sort of taking a Russian approach of Assad must be involved in the Syrian resolution. That's why I personally find it so hard to make an idea. We only one side of the war thought that was a big issue, you know. Yeah, but I was just didn't give two tosses about it. The whole idea was there wasn't a border there, and we thought there was a border there. Like it's the
yeah,
asymmetry of a situation is almost laughable.
I know, but the point is that whilst there isn't a line on the ground, there is in terms of projected governance, as in, we were invited by the Iraqi government to bomb Daesh in the north of Iraq, as in they rang David Cameron and said, there's something wrong with your Windows PC. Oh, sorry, hang on, wrong caller.
They rang him on
And
his cell phone when that hotline blinged.
Yeah. But they called him up and said, look, we need help. Rang up. I'm sure they rang Obama first, because we're not the first port of call anymore. Apparently, we're no longer deemed cool enough for that. But the thing is, the difference is that they wanted us in. When it comes to Syria, and whilst there is an imaginary line there, it has been drawn in by a ruler, by someone 100 years ago, nearly 100 years
No,
ago.
no, not quite 100 years ago.
God no. Well, say 60 years ago, 70 years ago, was 1940s.
Well, I
Jesus.
mean, if Iraq was created October 1st, 1919, I'm assuming Syria was created at the same time. It wasn't like,
Okay.
right, here's Iraq with a nice straight line. What's to the left of it? Oh, don't worry about that.
That'll be governed by some nutter in the future. We don't want to worry about that.
Yeah.
But the thing is that the line there is very real to the Iraqis and the Syrians. So whilst Daesh doesn't believe that there should be any border between Iraq and Syria, it just needs to be one whole group of crazy countries in the Middle East.
No, one large not country.
One large, ridiculously not nation state group of people who call themselves a state, who are not a state, who follow Islam but are not Muslim. I'm getting confused here. Why is it called the Islamic State again? They're clearly that's just both of them are against their aims, really. But that line exists on a geopolitical scale, and that's why it's been so important for us to wait until we knew what we were doing before getting involved in Syria, because it is a three-way war. You've got just the complexity of the situation is ridiculous. You've got Assad, who is the elected or non. No, they're not the. Anyway, he's the government. All right, he is the head of the government. He's the president of Syria, and you've got his army embroiled in a civil war against various religious and non-religious factions, like the Free Syrian Army, moderates and extremists are on all sides.
We should point out quickly, some of the moderates who have defected to ISIS with Western weapons, so always good.
Yay. Maybe we shouldn't sell them.
I don't even think we sold them. I think we gave them away. If we were selling them, at least we could boost the economy. But these are pro bono AK-47s.
I'm pretty sure AK-47s are built in Russia anyway, not over here. So basically so you got the moderate, the rebel forces. Then you've got Islamic State, and then you've got the coalition of air forces against Daesh in Syria, which includes the US and now the UK, France, Germany, those teams. And then you've got Russia also fighting Daesh, but on the side of Assad. And we're sort of on the side of the rebel factions, but we're letting them be for the time being because we have bigger fish to fry in Daesh.
And the Turks shot down a Russian jet, which is technically...
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't even really talked about that because... I mean,
that's a bit awkward, isn't it?
Yeah, NATO shoot down Russian plane. I'm sure it will be fine.
What I love is the fact that they just rang up NATO. Could you imagine that? Like the Turkish president, being told, we've just downed a Russian plane. Oh my God, Barack, we've done something really horrible. No, not that. We've downed a Russian plane. What do you mean it's going to be okay? We're closer to Russia than you are. Ah!
Oh, sorry. So yeah, it's going to be okay for me.
Yeah, there's Putin there, just looking at the phone, going, "Why won't you ring? Where are you, Mr. Turk? You
Sorry, is
haven't
that
yet."
Putin or a generic Bond villain from the 80s, from somewhere in Germany?
They were all Russian. All the Bond villains coming to up until. What, 19... Well, hang on. GoldenEye, he was Russian. World's Not Enough. They were not Russian, but there was something to do with Russia in that one.
It's the detail that makes this.
I know, so brilliant. In fact, the Russians stopped being the villain after Daniel Craig got involved. Really,
Sure, it's a
in fact,
reboot.
the
But
communists stopped being the villains when Daniel Craig got involved.
yeah, good point. The Soviets. But I mean, the Russian plane shooting down. Like, I again, according to Turkey, the Russian plane was in their airspace. According to Russia, it wasn't. First disagreement. Now, what I read, I forget which website it was on. According to Turkey, they sent 10 messages to the Russian jets, to the Russian jet, saying you're in our airspace. But also, according to Turkey, the Russian jet was in their airspace for 17 seconds because there's a little bit of Turkey that like sticks down and it sort of
Yeah,
flew
into
over it.
Syria. Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's one message every 1.7 seconds. Now, I don't know enough about this. Is there a computerized message that gets sent straight away? That seems possible. That's even if there's one of those every 5 seconds gets sent, that's still 4 messages. That's still, that's another 13 messages that someone's got to rattle off on the radio pretty quickly. And I don't know what to make of it. And then some people turn around and say, well, this is what the Russians were doing over Ukraine, just flying their jets with no sort of regard for the territorial boundaries, which are clearly quite an issue when it comes
Again,
to.
drawn on with a ruler.
Yeah, well, no, I don't think that one is. It's more freehand. Probably should research this. Probably some sort of war back in. That's how most boundaries get decided. It's some sort of war, but it's. Who knows? And then Russia, after this happened, Russia turned around and say, we've got proof that actually Turkey is funneling ISIS oil, which, if it's true, is about the most messed up thing ever. But there's a US-led coalition. It's not officially a NATO coalition, but anything US-led is sort of NATO-y by default.
Yeah.
So there's a sort of NATO-ish coalition where a NATO partner is funding the enemy by getting cheap oil from them, but basically, kind of like HSBC and Mexican drug money, you're providing that conduit from smugglers and illegality to the legal system where it can just flow around the world.
Yeah.
Turkey claim Turkey haven't denied that some smugglers are coming into Turkey. You'd be an idiot to deny that. Smugglers, I assume, don't need a very good paper trail. That's sort of their job. I assume they don't pay a lot of tax either. It's a perk of the job. But the idea that this is somehow there's upper level Turkish government involvement, and Russia released last 48 hours a load of drone footage appearing to show it. I'm not an expert at looking at drone footage, but I was watching today on RT, and there was certainly an awful lot of lorries in quite a long line. And then Turkey turned around and said, well, actually, no, it's Russia that's smuggling out ISIS oil. So, I mean, I don't want to get too advanced about this. It's a little bit playground in terms of your mum's fat. Actually, your mum is fat, because the Turkish strategy appears to be accusing Russia of everything Russia accuses Turkey of doing. Presumably tomorrow, someone will turn around and say, oh yeah, in opposites land, this is this kind of high stakes political conversation that we're dealing with here. You're smuggling ISIS oil. No, you're smuggling Daesh oil. Like it's.
Yeah. It's pathetic, isn't it? Really.
I am genuinely waiting for about 20 years down the line when WikiLeaks tells us what's actually been happening. Because
I can't wait. It'll be great. I mean,
I still don't know if WikiLeaks is a good thing. Some useful information's come out of it. Have some people been endangered? We're only going to know that when there's more WikiLeaks in the future. How many people have actually died as a result of the initial WikiLeaks?
But
so I can't. I struggle to make a call on it. But
I'd
for
be
situations
surprised.
like this of basically grassing up governments, it's kind of the only way we ever find out.
I would seriously be surprised if WikiLeaks were to post anything that could be, let's say, unkind towards Russia, purely for the fact that Edward Snowden's currently living there. And
that is quite a good point, actually.
If they were to post something that would be, quite controversial for Russian politicians, they may just turn around and go, Edward, there's a flight to Washington leaving in about 20 minutes. We've booked you a seat.
20 minutes is not enough time to get through security. It needs to be at least 45 for international flying. So that wouldn't work.
Yeah, because that's exactly what Edward Snowden would say, isn't it? You will not be able to get me through security quick enough. But then, of course, it's Russia. We know people.
Little known fact about Snowden, he's a massive smart aleck. Like, oh, Russia.
But no, I think you make a good point. I mean, it's almost, you're right. It's pathetic and it's playground. The problem is,
it's really serious, and we are eventually going to find out what the truth is.
Yeah,
I think it's massive worldwide consequences. If a NATO partner is assisting ISIS, like what?
Oh, yeah, that's. I mean, I at very least expel them from NATO. But I think the little bit that came down, the bit in Syria of Turkey that the Russian jet allegedly flew over. The Turkish line with Syria is sort of a straight line. I mean, it's got a few ups and downs here, but this is quite a big one into Syria. It makes me think that someone's got a big, again, using the ruler analogy and drawing a ruler on a map. It's when you're trying to draw a really, really straight line, you just go, let's just put that back up there and carry on going. And
they're suggesting that the work experience boy is responsible for this particular department. The 1919 work experience boy.
Yes, exactly. The 1919 work experience boy, we should find him and try him for war crimes because he has killed a Russian pilot.
And if you think that joke's sexist, it's about 1919, so it couldn't have been a female. Historically accurate gag, right?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. The work experience boy was married at the time. His wife was at home making him a sandwich.
No. Anyway, we're clearly. This is going to be one of our longest podcasts. We're clearly going to be talking about this next week as well.
Until the cows come home, yeah. Can we move on to celebrity gossip? Because I've just found the best celebrity gossip article ever.
Is it about Kendall Jenner doing a photo shoot in a wheelchair and she's been branded ableist by lots of people?
No, but that sounds hilarious.
Yeah, well, Kendall Jenner, who is like a fashion model and a Victoria's Secret model now. I don't think she's a Victoria's Secret angel. That's like the kind of, business class. Yeah, but she did do some modeling for Victoria's Secret, and she's quite a famous person.
Yeah.
I mean, she hasn't been on this show yet. Maybe we should tweet her.
Doesn't make her famous then. We should Instagram this.
I was more thinking we could preload off of her fame more than anything. But yeah, she's done a photo shoot with a wheelchair, and this has upset quite a lot of people. Basically, it's seeing it as some sort of ableist slur, which I don't know, because is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
I have photo shoots. About 120,000 people will have seen it. Maybe twice that number of people.
She's got 1 million followers on Instagram.
Yeah, but I mean, I've now, as I said, I've joined Instagram. I mean, I don't look at everything on there. I probably look at the first 3 posts and go, yeah, it's probably me done for the day. So I doubt that if all 1 million of her followers are like this. When is Kendall Jenner next going to update? Give me that now. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be a lot more people like me, sadly.
Also, I just don't have an opinion on this, because if someone went out of their way to insult wheelchair people,
like Glenn Hoddle did,
I would be quite annoyed. That's just absolutely not on. But
I mean, Glenn Hoddle said that they must have done something wrong in a previous life.
That's horrendous. Donald Trump slandered the disabled journalist who, I forget what his condition was, but Trump was on stage at a rally and just went,
and he did that.
It's like, that's
so you should see this guy, and it's like, no, Donald, no.
I mean, obviously his ratings have gone up. It's Donald Trump, but it's still not on at all. But is this, no one's trying to say make a wheelchair sexy or something like that, but do we as a society just ignore the sexual side of people in the wheelchair? Possibly. I mean, I did watch a documentary on it once on disabled people and sexual intercourse on Channel 4, and it was quite interesting because it occurred to me, I think I was about 19 at the time, I genuinely never considered it as a thing, and I watched it and I was like, oh, I probably should have done this, you know. It's something you don't think about.
There
Would
was
it
a
be a good
recent
idea
article on BBC News about it. There was a
Yeah.
recent article about it, on the BBC. There was a whole article about people in wheelchairs and sex. How the argument was that fine, I'm not going to be as sexy as the next person, but I would at some point like to be appreciated for who I am, not for the wheelchair that I sit on. And maybe that's the whole point she was making with her photo shoot. Maybe it's sort of, it's who you are, not the fact that there's a wheelchair in the photo shoot. And that's not people shouldn't. The whole point is being missed by those who complain about the wheelchair being there. Is the idea that you're supposed to be looking at the person and not the wheelchair? I mean, alternatively, she's just the most horrible, vile human being on earth, and she's taking the mick out of people in wheelchairs. But I don't think that's the case. I could be missing.
I honestly don't know. I mean, you hear a lot. There's a lot of calls for the use of things like plus-size models. Basically, anyone who isn't like a 6 foot, like size 0/size 4, if you're in the UK, like model. Like the idea of you should, like the fashion industry should be trying to work around normal people. And is this an extension of it? Would it be a good thing to have high stakes fashion show, Paris, Milan, somewhere like that, with wheelchair models?
Again, I have seen an article recently where it was an interview with a person who was a wheelchair model, as in she did fashion shows in a wheelchair because she can't walk. So this is clearly like an issue that's in the news at the moment.
Yeah. On the flip side, she also got naked and sat on top of a horse. So who really cares?
Yes.
So yeah, but no, the wheelchair thing is genuinely. I don't like. It sounds horrendous. I'm genuinely waiting for the media to tell me what I should think because I don't know. Like I honestly.
Yeah, but which media are you going to read? Are you going to read the Daily Mail or like a respectable outlet of news?
I don't know. I'll just wait for the internet so I can sound cool. Like, yeah, I read it online because I'm hip. No, but
the last person who said I read it online and sounded cool was in 2009.
All right. Wow.
Seriously.
Unlucky me.
I tell you what, I want to move on quickly because I know we need to wrap this up.
We've got another 5 minutes, but yeah.
Very, very quickly. I just want to let you guys know that I'm a big, big fan of Kanye West's the name of his new son. He's calling him Baby Yeezus, which I think is a great name, and that kid is going to be ritually abused in the playground, like his older sister. But also, I mean, Kanye must be so full of himself right now that he must be of the belief, Kim Kardashian is expected any day now. Now, I'm sure they can get doctors who can say, yes, it will come on this date, this definite date. At which point, Kanye West will just stand up and go, "Be born, my son," and it will just pop out. Ta-da! He must have that thought in his head every now and then. Just think, yeah, I could probably do that.
I mean, Kanye West he's clearly got quite a he's got a lot of self-confidence as a man. I don't know whether I can agree with you, but he thinks he has the power to control birth. Sort of like a modern day King Canute and the Tide. I mean, maybe he does. I can't really say as to how much self-confidence Mr. West has got.
I love it, Mr. West.
If you're watching, leave us a comment.
Yeah. If you're watching. But yeah, I'm sure there are many people watching at the moment.
According to this, there's one viewer, but I think that's the other PC I have recording it. So. But anyway, no podcast next week because I'm on holiday, unless we do it on Sunday. You free Sunday?
I can do Sunday. No, I can't do Sunday. Well, this Sunday?
No, Sunday the 13th.
Yeah, I should be able to do that Sunday.
Oh, well, there might be a podcast next week then. I just lied to you.
What I'm loving is the fact that the listeners and the viewers get an opportunity to listen to us prep the next podcast live on air. I think that's brilliant.
I made notes. I feel like from now on we're just going to grow, and soon we'll be filming this in HD. We'll have guests on.
Yeah. Yeah. We've already had guests on. I mean, my sister, it doesn't really count, but she was a guest. She came on briefly.
I was thinking like a third laptop / computer hooked up.
Can we get your mum on at some point? That's not, by the way, for viewers, that's not like a reference to like an old your mum joke between us. As in, I was invited to Blakey's 21st birthday party, not by him, but by his mum.
That's a pretty specific gag. So like, your mum something, so she went on a podcast. Oh. I mean, but maybe there are gags like that out there, but that's pretty niche banter. Anyway, any closing remarks?
No.
Cool. See you next week. Peace.
Bye.